Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Thank you for braving the weather. We are going to be talking about bringing color into the home, and it's actually maybe very timely for a day like today when you kind of wake up and everything's a little bit dark in the house and everything. And we're going to talk through how the artists are able to really bring that the best way of anybody. So first of all, talk a little bit about who we are. We are TRA Art Group. We're in Suite 29. We invite you to come down and see the gallery here. We just opened last September, but TRA has been around for over 30 years. And we represent a talented group of local artists. Some of them are national, but most of them have ties or roots or something here in Michigan. We do recommendations. We can do in-home trial. Christine, I'll introduce her in a bit. She's really great at looking at what are you trying to achieve in your space and looking at all of the things that we have available at our disposal and how do we help you to do that. We'll do custom commissions. One of our artists is here. She likes to go into the home and see like what you are all about and how can she sort of bring her vision to what would work for you. So we will do commissions. And then we're really doing a lot with works on paper too. A lot of our works are on canvases like you see here, which is great in a big room or in a dramatic place. But sometimes you need something on paper that you could frame and put in your nice powder room or put in your bedroom or even a closet that you go into every single day. You really should look at art as an everyday thing. We also have framing coordination with Bruce White Gallery, who was a longtime partner that also just moved into the design center as well. And we also have a trade program for our designers because we work a lot with both customers directly in homes, but also with designers who have a vision for people's homes. And we really can work with them and say, what are you trying to accomplish? What will go with what you're already doing? And so we do a lot of collaboration with designers. So who are we? Tim Pike is the original founder. Tim is a longtime friend of artists. He knows the art world, and so he still continues to be part of the group and really lending his expertise. Christine St. Bale's in the front row here. She's the gallery director. She's been working with Tim for almost 10 years, and her special strength is really looking at what your needs might be and then bringing those things to really bring it to life. And then I'm Karen Martirosian, and my husband and I, actually my husband is Christine's brother, and we kind of came into this business a very short time ago because Tim decided that he was wanting to step back from the business, the day-to-day business a little bit, and maybe go towards a little bit more towards retiring and taking some time for himself. So he said to Christine, who was his partner in crime, if you want to take over the gallery, it's for you to take. And she sort of came to Jeff and me and said, listen, I don't know if I can do this alone. Would you want to help me? And I can run the gallery, but the business side of it, I don't know so much about. And so I have a 30-year sort of business background. I spent 10 years on the advertising side. I spent 10 years marketing in Volkswagen of America when they were here. I was the marketing director there. And then the last 10 years, I've been more on the media side. I worked for Warner Brothers Discovery, doing marketing partnerships for the clients there. So I've always had sort of a creative media design kind of a background. And so this sounded great as sort of a project for me to get involved with. And so I'm kind of the back of the house business person, a little bit on the marketing side, and that's why I'm talking to you today. But in addition to sort of being a kind of a co-owner background type of a partner, I actually started out as a customer. So my husband, Jeff, and I, we built our forever home. You know, our kids were getting older, and we built a home in Birmingham about 6 years ago. And we went through the whole build process. We worked with the designer who helped us with the build part, and then a really talented designer that helped us with furnishings and how to kind of finish off the home. And here's my dining room, and it was like all the walls in the house. We really were like, okay, we're running out of money, we're tired, we just don't want to do it. Art sounded really overwhelming to us. And so we said, well, we'll wait on the art piece of it, and maybe we'll find something on our travels and it'll be great, you know, and things like that. And then a couple of years later, we still had these bare walls. And so Christine, who is not a hard sell, she's just a really good person at looking at suggestions. She said, why don't you let Tim and I bring some pieces to your home. So she brought a couple pieces. I pointed out some that I liked, and they brought some pieces that I chose, and they brought some pieces that I did not choose. And if you would have told me that I would pick this is a close-up of the painting we ended up with. If I would pick something, because I had sort of a monotone house, I liked my neutrals and everything, but if you would have told me that I would have chosen a painting with dark green and purple and brown and black and aqua, and Lenore's the artist here, so I'm sorry if I'm not describing the colors the same, but that's what I would look at. When you look at this close up, I wouldn't have chosen that. And when I got that painting into the space, even the size was bigger than we thought. It really transformed the space. And so this picture I actually took 2 days ago when we had another dusting of dusting of snow. I woke up and this is what I see from my kitchen. I was having coffee in my kitchen and it was just beautiful. And when you walk through the house, you see how the color changes. When you see it at night, you see how the color changes. And so, so much so that I actually bought the companion piece to put over my butler's pantry. So I'm not just an owner, it's like the hair club guy. I'm not just an owner, I'm also a customer, but that's how I started out. So what we really want to talk about today is if you're looking to bring color into your home, who better to trust than an artist? An artist that draws from multiple kinds of inspiration. They use multiple techniques, and they really do bring something that is the X factor that can transform a space. So we have 3 artists that we are going to talk about their work. Lenore Gimpert is here in the front row. These are her new pieces that she just completed. We'll talk a little bit about those. Mary Rousseau, these are her new pieces that she just completed. She's going to talk to us directly about those as well. And then we also want to start with the works of Albert Newbill. And Albert Newbill, he's not here to speak with us because he's no longer with us. Albert is somebody that we represent, and his works represent a very significant portion of American art history. He really was a Detroit native. He started out as a local Detroit boy. He went to Cass Tech. And he started his art career really taking lessons at the DIA. Really got into this, started experimenting. And then the war broke out. World War II broke out, and he went to, young guy, he had to go into the Army Corps, the Air Corps. And after he got back from the Army, he wanted to pursue art. So he went to New York. What were all the artists doing at that time, post-war? They were going to New York. And he spent 15 years in New York working at the Brooklyn Museum of Art, the Hans Hofmann School of Art, which was extremely significant at the time. I'll get into that a little bit. But that was really not so much an art school, but a place where a lot of established artists were sort of collecting and working together and sharing their craft. And also the New School of Social Research. So what was happening after World War II at the time? This is when the abstract expressionist movement was really taking off. And abstract expressionist movement is the one recognized art movement that was distinctly American. And what was going on then is it was the end of World War II. All of these artists were descending upon this area of Brooklyn and around New York. There were artists who had fled Europe. And the majority of these artists had lived through the Depression, World War II, and the atom bomb. And they wanted to express their creativity in a different way. They did not want to use the typical shapes and subjects, religion and people. They didn't want to do that because what they had experienced of the human condition was really not that great. So they wanted to express themselves a little bit differently. They wanted to use color and shape and inspiration. And it was really an optimistic type of a thing. And it was also a very subjective. They wanted it to be a little bit more subjective. I don't want to do a religious figure or something like that. I want to draw my inspiration. I want to do it the way I want to do. And so when you look at abstract art, a lot of people think, well, I don't understand it, or it looks like something a 5-year-old could do or whatever. But ironically, abstract art is even more approachable than a lot of other art because you don't have to really analyze it. It's really the artist was putting his or her inspiration on the page and on the canvas, and it's up to you to react to it how you want to do it too. So this one, I added this actual work because Mary said, make sure that you represent when you're talking about abstract expressionism. This is Joan Mitchell, and this is one of hers because there were also some really significant females at the time. So Albert Newbill, he goes to New York. He finds himself as a young guy in the midst of all this. And who is he hanging around with but Jackson Pollock, Willem de Kooning, Franz Kline. So he did work and study alongside Jackson Pollock, and Jackson Pollock actually called him kid, because here's this kid, this talented kid who's kind of traveling amongst us in our circles. And then later he would show his work with Willem de Kooning and Franz Kline. And at the time, there were two sort of directions in abstract expressionism. There were the action painters, which, as most popularized and well known by Jackson Pollock, where he actually used physical action to get his paint on the canvas. And then the other were these color field painters, which kind of filled these canvases with large areas of colors, saturated, just color blocks and things like that. And the one artist you may recognize that's most well known for this approach is Mark Rothko. And Christine and I were in Paris last month, and we were lucky enough to attend the Mark Rothko exhibit at the Louis Vuitton Foundation. And this was a show that was the most significant collection of all of his works from all around the globe. So they had works from a private collections, they had works from the Tate Gallery, from the Museum, National Museum in Washington, museums around Paris. And so it was really a comprehensive show that, and even they had some works that he commissioned for a show that never happened. So we were walking through this space and it was very dark. And we're like, why is the lighting so dark on all these paintings? And as you move through the gallery, it was designed, and actually one of the curators was Christopher Rothko, his son. And the way they designed it was that it would be very shadowy. So as you move through the space, you were able to understand how the color was applied and how it changed as you moved through the light and the space. As you were standing away from it, it looked one way, and as you got closer, it looked completely different. And so, like a lot of these color approaches, he used different techniques to make that happen. One of which was using egg whites and eggs mixed in with his paint, which actually was a technique that dates back to Renaissance times. But that was a way that he was able to show some of these things. You see these beautiful color blocks, and then you can see how even something that's as sort of monotone looking as this, or at least more neutral, you see how you get that layer in the color. So I think all of this is really relevant to sort of where we come with Albert Newbill. These are Albert Newbill's. He had his technique, which was similar. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Christine.
When he puts his content over it, then you really get the movement as to what Karen was speaking of earlier, because like as a certain paint color will hit wherever the different color underneath it is, it creates a different color. So like when you're looking at this, where this white may be whiter here, over here it's more opalescent, over here it's more pink, so that all throughout, every time you look at the piece, you're getting a different perspective on it and the movement of it.
And so you can also see a little bit about how his work evolved over time. He spent the 15 years studying in New York, studying and in those circles. And then he left New York and he actually continued his works and he taught in Ohio. So he passed away in 2011, and a lot of his works were then left in a private collection that was connected to his family. And so those remaining, the rest of them are in private collections, but in those remaining works, that family member called Tim Pike, our founder, who was friends with Albert Newbill, and said, I've got these paintings, would you represent them? So we at TRA, we have the remaining pieces of Albert Newbill's life's work. And so those are here. You're welcome to come see them. We have them here. And this just shows a sampling of really what he did, from shapes all the way to these color blocks that he did towards the end of his life. And I can't speak for him, but I will quote that he said that he believed that all good art comes from a kind of reflection and from looking at things creatively. So he said, people are trained to look at things in a certain way, but an artist must look beyond the training and realize that things aren't what they seem. So I think this really keeps with what we were saying about trust an artist to bring something new into your home, into your life. So I'm going to kind of switch gears now over to Lenore, also who does a very layered type of abstract, but with florals. And Lenore, Lenore may or may not talk if you have questions. That's great for her, but I do, and correct me if I'm not speaking properly about your work, because I do think it's beautiful. Like I said, I own 2 of her pieces and they're beautiful in my home. And what she's doing now are these works on paper. And she just spent 3 weeks in St. Martin's. And if you look sort of at what her scenery looked like, she had this beautiful backdrop in St. Martin's, and she was able to paint in layers. She would start with one of the paintings, let that layer sort of dry, move on to the next one. And it was almost like this beautiful artistic assembly line in this backdrop of St. Martin's. But I think what's significant to see, though, is that all of these colors were inspired by that one setting. And I think that's the other thing, where if you really look deep and you look at how they can come together and layer, this is what you get. So thank you so much. And then Mary Rousseau. Mary, I interviewed Mary a little bit about kind of her philosophy, and I love her take on nature. And so I'm going to let her come up and talk about how she really sees nature as life's ultimate inspiration.
All right. So unlike Lenore, I do not have a beautiful tropical landscape outside my window. I have the Lower East Side of Detroit. So yes, it's gray, but it's beautiful to me. So my work has always been inspired by nature, but it's man's interaction with nature. How do we function in our environment? How are we influenced by our environment? Obviously, gorgeous, right? Mine is different. So I have sort of watched, I've been downtown now for a third of my life. Actually, I started at Wayne State in 1980. So I've been there for 40 some odd years, right? I've watched the city come up, come down, come back, move forward, and so that always speaks in my work. It talks about layers and the way we interact in our environment. So my paintings are layered. They start out pretty neutral. They end up looking like crap, and then they get rearranged again, and then we organize them and make some sense. Yeah, they're pretty physical. I'm a small but mighty painter. My work tends to be about 6 foot square. I use industrial materials, roofing tar, house paint, resin, charcoal bricks. I don't know. Anything you can pick up, I will try to use it. Lately, it's been roofing nails gouged into the surface of the work. So the layers are all built up, and all the lines that you see in these paintings are actually gouged into the surface. So again, it becomes this very, very physical act of mark making. And it's a total reaction to like what is going on in the landscape right now. These prints are new. And again, they started out as black and white, and they are again about nature and the environment. They're a little smaller scale. They're a little bit more intimate. When I make intimate work, I want you to walk up into it. So it's something that's going to invite you in to look at the surface and have an experience, and everybody's going to have a different experience. Somebody's going to be like, oh, that looks like a roadmap of whatever, and that looks like an upside down table or mushroom, but that's all up to you. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today, you guys.
Art should never, ever be intimidating at all. In fact, it's funny, there's a lot of studies that have shown that art actually helps your mood. And the largest one was just completed in 2023. The European Union, a bunch of countries got together, and they're actually doing a series of research projects around the role of arts and sciences in our technological world. And the one study that they were doing, they actually took hundreds of subjects, and they just put a piece of art in front of them. And in the first 30 seconds, the levels of the neurotransmitter dopamine spiked in the first 30 seconds of viewing that artwork. And that's the neurotransmitter that sort of gives your good mood to you. So if we've done nothing else for you today, we hope we gave you a little shot of dopamine and also just an appreciation of really what talented artists can really bring. And so I hope you'll like go to all of the different suites and see some other art. Stop by our suite. We're in suite 29. So thank you, Lenore, and thank you, Mary, for joining us, and Christine and everybody for coming.